Okay, so hi everyone. This is going to be a very special edition of one of our live trainings, or trainings, I should say, because this isn't live. But I am really excited to have Mack here. I think specifically because I have always had a problem planning ahead, right? It's just a thing. You get into your work, you're doing things on the go, and if you did set plans, they never really come through. Your goals continue to change. And then along comes the new year and everyone's like, oh, make a yearly plan. You have to plan for the next year. And as I was just saying to you, Mack, I always find myself like, I'll make an elaborate plan, tons of goals, and then you either never make them and it's really frustrating and you feel like you've maybe disappointed yourself, but also it's just so hard to actually follow that plan. And that's why I love Mack's plan, because I think was it 3 or 4 months ago? I can't remember when it was. Oh God, it must have been so much longer.
Yeah.
God. But you introduced us to your 90-day process and these 4 simple lists that you make. And since then, life has been so much easier with planning. And I wanted to give this gift to our, readers, subscribers, listeners out there, and kind of help you guys be able to plan and feel good about your planning and feel that you're achieving something. Because I know that's what your lists have done for me. So I met Mack in Dublin, which was so much fun. We both spoke at Learn Inbound. Mack is a genius. But I'm just going to let you introduce yourself and then we can just talk about it. So yeah, Mack, introduce yourself.
Okay, great. Thanks, Talia. Hi, everyone. I'm Mack Fogelson, and I have been in the search engine marketing industry for quite a long time, and also just in the entrepreneurial world for probably about 14 years. And that's when I met Talia. So I speak a lot about community and really just purpose and helping companies find their growth from a very centered place. So a lot of times Talia and I talk about hacks, if you will, for really getting organized and just feeling like you're on top of your world. I have a really good friend, his name is Spencer Pittman, who tells me that plans are just lies on paper.
Brilliant.
Any more, in the world that we're living in, it's really unrealistic to think that anything that you plan for that is any ways out, like maybe more than, 30, 60, 90 days, that it feels like it may even come to fruition. And so a lot of time is spent on these maybe annual plans in very much a lot of detail. And it's usually not anything that comes to fruition, or there's a lot of time and effort wasted. So I'm happy to share with you some of the things that I have used. Really, for me, planning is more about iteration than it is, and learning than it is about planning. So it's more so adopting a mindset of continuous learning and testing, which is obviously very familiar to Talia's world, and just doing what you can to learn very quickly and then adapting on the fly and going from there. So the process that I usually start with in terms of getting organized and really understanding like everything that's on my plate or that might be on the plate for the entire company is creating what we've shared as 4 helpful lists. And this is an exercise that I learned from a company called Patterson. And essentially, it's a very simple exercise. You create a spreadsheet and you make 4 different columns. And the first column is right. And that's everything that is going right, either in your workflow individually in your work or in the company as a whole. And then the second column is wrong. So that's really anything that should probably be stopped almost nearly immediately. There's usually not a lot that goes on the wrong list. So once I get through the rest of the columns, I can talk more about that. The third column is missing. So in that column, it's anything that you're missing in order to achieve what you want to achieve, the goals that you'd like to work towards. And then the last column is confused. And essentially anything that's in this column are questions that really need to be answered in order for you to move forward. So right, wrong, missing, confused. Always start with right, so that you're looking at things that are really positive about what's going on. There's always more than you think.
Yeah, it makes you feel good about yourself too, right?
Yeah. And when you're thinking about the stuff that's right, think through like finances, think the amount of resources that you maybe currently have, think technology or tools, think infrastructure, or just something that maybe you've accomplished. So the right column is definitely a place to give yourself a lot of credit, like Talia's saying. In the wrong column, as I mentioned before, there's not a lot of things that fit into wrong. Typically, the things that go on these lists are in the columns of missing and confused. And missing can be anything from resources to funding to, I don't know, even processes or systems that you might need to build. Could be a marketing strategy that you're missing, or time with a colleague. So any of those things can go on that list. And then confused, like I said, are usually sets of questions. So just putting that together like helps you get your mind on a wall.
Right. So if we're looking at the wrong, like the wrong could be wasting time on Twitter, or like doing things that don't make sense. Like I know I want to do X, but I spend more time doing Y. Something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes a wrong, like let's say you decide that you waste too much time on social media, you could put that in your wrong column. And then you could also create a missing that is maybe born out of that wrong. So why are you spending so much time on social media? Are you procrastinating? Do you need an understanding of how to move forward or what's lacking? So any of that clarity could be put in the missing column or in the confused column for you to address so that you can move your work forward.
That's brilliant. And then, so I have these 4 lists. I'm looking at the right. So that's made me feel really good because I know that I'm, going towards the right direction. I'm doing the right stuff. There's a few things that I know I'm doing wrong, and everyone knows what they're doing wrong, but they just need to see it right in front of their face. Then you have, the missing, so stuff that you need, like I need a tool, or I'm missing a VA, or I need an employee, or I need someone to sit with me and coach me through something. Or I'm just missing a budget, maybe.
Perfect.
And then confused are things that I just don't understand, right? Like I'm not sure how to get to it. So I need to get X, but I'm not sure how to do that. So I'm confused about building a strategy. I'm confused about how this would work, or I need to start doing SEO and I'm confused about it and stuff like that. So where would I go from here? So I have the lists. What would be my next step?
Yeah, so the next best step is probably to group like things together, either in a column in itself or across columns. So you may find that there's things in the missing column that are also related to questions that you have in the confused column. So you can group those things together. And then from there, I typically like to categorize things in bigger buckets. So sometimes you'll notice that you'll have a bucket for, let's say, biz dev, business development, sales and marketing for your company or for your individual efforts in your career. Maybe you have a bucket that's more for operational things. So just like you talked about earlier, maybe there's some HR stuff that needs to happen. Maybe you need to investigate the cost for an employee, or like looking out to see what would happen in prospective deals and when those triggers needed to be pulled. So those things can be in the operations bucket. And then you might just have in general your work bucket where you're serving your clients and what that looks like. So I tend to lump everything into bigger buckets. And if this is something that you're doing like as an individual, you can also even put on there a personal bucket, that things that you need to handle in your personal life. and or things that would help you like make space for yourself and really honor yourself. So those things can go in a bucket as well.
That's awesome. I was going to say, because I remember when we talked about it, that you really do tend to like put things in buckets. And I noticed that when I do my lists, I do find things that just work together, as you said. So things that are missing, I'm also confused about, or things that are wrong that I know that I'm missing or confused about. So it's always great to kind of have that. And then I can look at things and know, okay, here's the things that are in operations, in the operations bucket. Here are the things that are in the marketing bucket. And here are the things that are in, the personal bucket. And then start looking at it as maybe tasks or stuff that needs to happen, right?
Yes, for sure. So this exercise, an entire exercise, really lends itself to that cycle of iteration that I was talking about, of continuous learning. Is once you get the clarity on what your buckets are, then essentially what you're looking at is, what is it that is most important to do now, and what things can wait. So a lot of times that's for in a business, it's what is my direct line to revenue. So if there's anything on your list that needs to get handled so that you can bring more revenue into the business, and obviously that gains priority over other items. There may be things that you're procrastinating on that must get done in order for other things to get done. So ideally you want to, from those buckets, break down almost the tasks or the actions that would come out of each thing that's inside of that bucket. And that way you know what your next step is. And you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. So it's really looking at, over the next 30 days, what is the most important thing for me to handle? And if I accomplish these things, would I be moving the business forward or my work forward? You can also keep things that maybe aren't as imperative, but are important longer term, out kind of in maybe a 90-day view of what you're striving towards. So just looking at it maybe in a 30, 60, and 90 day, I would leave anything in the 60 to 90 day window as maybe higher level or 10,000 foot view. And then anything that's going on for the next 30 days is very specific to what needs to be accomplished, so that there is no procrastination about what's important. But what I would mention as well is, once you pull from these lists and you start kind of cycling through, the cycle that I really use for this is a 90-day cycle. So kind of looking at what is most important to do over the next 30 days. And then once I'm nearing the end of those 30 days, I'm looking at that longer list of what maybe didn't make the 30 days or maybe farther out. Is something else that's maybe shiny and maybe screaming at me from my external forces, telling me that it's priority over something else for the next 30 days in that 60-day window. So just kind of looking at the end of that 30 days, now what's most important based on what I've learned and what I know and what I've done. Do I need to shift the priorities that are in those buckets? There may be new priorities, so I can dump those things in the list and put them in the bucket. And then every 30 days, you're just kind of doing a scrub, if you will. And really, it's a way to look at this as like agile sprints. Many people talk about that. So it's just a way of going farther than you think, but not too far, so that you're not wasting time and planning things that aren't necessary.
Yeah, I like the idea of being able to look at all the buckets and find these specific buckets. So I understand like where my main force is being directed at. And then being able to say, okay, next 30 days, I really need to focus on the 3 tasks in admin, 3 tasks in marketing, 3 tasks on the personal list. And being able to look at that and say, have I achieved it? And also, I think the first 30 days, and this is what I found, is that I kind of poured in quite a bit. I was like, oh, I can do this and this and this, and that will work. And then when I got to like the 25 day, I was like, oh, Talia, you like really
bit off too much.
Yeah, I overestimated it because I really thought, oh, this is going to be really easy. But, it is life and things come in and out all the time. So the fact that I have like that 60-day view, the 90-day view, I'm not going to start pushing more things in. I know that if I have new things, I have to look at the 60 and 90-day thing and say, wait, where does this fit in? Is it going to have to wait to the next 90-day cycle, or does something from that cycle get pushed out? Because I can only do 5 things every 30 days, for example. So if I've got a 6th thing, I need to push something out. I'm not going to try and put myself under pressure to get more stuff done, if that makes sense. Because that's, for me, that was another thing that I discovered, that I was just like planning too much. And then I was also disappointed in myself because I was sure that I could get stuff done and I wasn't. So that's a very good way of looking at it. And then, I mean, I guess my question is, do you set goals when you're looking at that 90-day plan?
Yeah, goals are important, and as much as purpose is important. So obviously always starting with purpose, like the big, like hefty purpose of why are you even here? Like, what's the end result of your efforts once you accomplish what you're here to accomplish? And then breaking that into maybe your purpose over the next 90 days, if you will. So looking at it quarterly is what you're doing in the day-to-day helping you achieve that purpose. And so goals obviously nest up very well into that, as not only goals, but how you're going to measure what you're going to measure.
Yes.
And it's kind of like what you're saying with overcommitting, is back to that mindset of this is just a way of learning and continuously iterating and having it feed in on itself ongoing. It's really not a matter of punishing yourself because you didn't get enough done. It's mostly just being very realistic about what is possible. And am I reaching the goals that I set out to reach? Are those in alignment with my purpose longer term? And am I moving the business forward? If after a few of those 90-day cycles, you're not seeing progress or momentum, then something is most likely wrong.
Yeah.
Of all the things that I've tried over the last 14 years, this has been the most effective for me in knowing what are the right things and being good about saying no, especially at those 30-day, like we used to call them catapults, where it's like a time to assess goals, assess measurement. Am I headed in the right direction? Do I need to adjust anything before I continue to go forward? It's a really great way to understand these are the only things I need to focus on, and everything else can just sit until they become relevant.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. I mean, when I'm looking at my business and, for entrepreneurs, for founders, freelancers, when you're looking at your business, it's easy to set a money goal, I guess. Like I can say, I want to double my revenue next year. It's a pretty nice, goal. But then like bringing it down is like, okay, if I want to double my revenue, what are the things that I want to do, or what are the things that I'm going to do in order to get there? And I can say, okay, I'm going to, get more clients. I'm going to, teach more courses, or I'm going to do more workshops, whatever that is. But then you have to, dial it back and start thinking about, okay, if I'm going to, take on more clients, what do I need to do? And that's where the lists come in for me, because I have lists for each part of my business. And even when you're working in-house, like when I was working in-house, as an employee, it would also have helped me just to kind of figure out, this is what my managers are expecting of me. This is what my role is supposed to be. This is what I need to gain. This is what I need to more correctly. This is what I need to get to. How do I get there? And I think it's also a great way to present it to your people that are, to your team and to your managers, so that they can also see. I mean, I wouldn't do it immediately. I do a first 90 cycle myself, just to kind of see that I fit everything in, and that I'm kind of know my capacity. But being able to go up to your managers and say, this is my 90-day plan. This is what I'm doing in the next 30 days. It gives so much clarity to people and kind of helps you understand where you're going. And it really focuses.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, ideally you would have, when you're working on a team, this would be kind of maybe a way of working that would be adopted by many teams, so that you're all in sync, because each team can have their own 90 that they're working towards. And it's also in sync with the other teams and what they're working towards. And there needs to be opportunities for them to communicate with each other and really align throughout those cycles so that you're all working towards the same goals and the same purpose ultimately. So that would be great. Also, just mentioning on the list with the questions, like you can bring a question to this list. You could say to the list, I want to double my revenue next year. How am I going to do that? And then use the list as really a focus exercise to identify what needs to happen for that to come to fruition. It's also important that you're not just looking at a financial goal, but you're also looking at a brand goal and the company or the individual that you're working to become, because that's really important in the mix as well.
Definitely. I couldn't have said it better. I mean, money is important, but personal growth or brand, just understanding what it is that you're putting out to the world, right? That you're bringing into the world, and that gives you your purpose and helps you become better at whatever you're doing, like the better version of whatever you're trying to achieve.
Definitely.
Mack, tell us where people can reach you, find more content, and kind of ask you questions.
Sure. Probably the best way to reach me is on Twitter, and my handle is at Mack Fogelson, MackFogelson. And I consult under Genuinely. That's my company consulting name. I'm also an org designer with The Ready. So some of this stuff obviously gets scaled up and and pushed out to teams on a much larger scale. But all of this stuff is really helpful in not planning too much, not trying to predict the future. There's no point in doing that. It's good to live in the uncertainty and just get really good at being adaptive and emergent in your work, with some focus grounded in purpose will serve you well.
I say embrace the chaos, people. Understand that this is life, and don't worry yourself about planning for a whole year in advance. It's why bother? I'm sorry, but why bother?
Have a vision. Definitely have that longer term vision. But that's all it is that longer term purpose, what you're looking to achieve long term in the world. But as far as your work from the day to day and even from week to week, it's just understanding what's most important to do this week so that I'm ultimately working towards that vision and purpose down the road.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mack.
Yeah,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thanks for having me.
Bye.